Rick Tocchet is officially out as the Vancouver Canucks head coach. I'll discuss whether he could be a good fit here in Chicago with the Blackhawks.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, Blackhawks fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, quick reminder right off the jump to hit that like button, hop in the comment section below, make sure to hit me with your Mailbag Monday questions, and to subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. Go and follow my Strictly Blackhawks account on X as well. That can be found at Talkin' Hockey, and that way you don't miss out on any of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. And one final shout out that I got to give goes out to today's sponsor, which is Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. You can now turn any TV into your own Xbox, no console needed. Just head on over to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more today. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. As I just said on the show a couple of days ago, Blackhawks fans, it's crazy how things can change in a hurry in this league. And we got another prime example of that yesterday as news broke that Rick Tocchet will not be returning to the Vancouver Canucks as their head coach after spending 2.5 seasons in that position, replacing Bruce Boudreau. And according to multiple different sources, this was a decision made by Rick Tocchet. Vancouver supposedly gave him a very lucrative offer, one that would have ranked him among the highest paid coaches in the entire NHL. But after talking things over with his agent and having multiple different meetings with the Canucks brass and general manager Jim Rutherford over the last week after their season came to a close, ultimately, Tocchet elected to pass on the Canucks offer and is now a free agent head coach. And I certainly understand why he made that decision, right? Considering the circus that Vancouver's been over the last year, the JT Miller, Elias Pettersson stuff, with it being a Canadian market, it obviously doesn't make it any easier. Now there's Quinn Hughes rumors rolling about there. So I definitely understand why Talk ultimately went in a different direction, and now can imagine he's going to be one of the most sought after coaches here on the free agent market and could put him in the conversation for the Blackhawks vacant head coaching position. And I've given a little bit of my thoughts on Tocchet, considering, there were some rumors that he could be departing Vancouver, but I wanted to dive into that fully here today. And I wouldn't be surprised, first and foremost, to see Rick Tocchet given an interview, considering all the experience that he has with the game in multiple different facets, which I'll get into here in just a second. But let's talk about why, if Rick Tocchet were to get an interview from the Blackhawks or were to find himself in the conversation of the final candidates or what it may be, let's talk about why Rick Tocchet getting an interview or being in the mix would make sense for the Chicago Blackhawks. First and foremost, while this past season obviously didn't go very well for Vancouver, 2024 was outstanding, and Rick Tocchet won the Jack Adams Award for the best coach in the entire NHL. The Canucks went 50-23-9, accumulating 109 points, good for tops in the Pacific Division. And even in the first year under Tocchet, when he did replace Bruce Boudreau in those final 36-40 games of the year, the team went 20-12-4 under Tocchet in that first half of the season. So even though, yes, things did not go well for the Canucks this past season, the last year and a half went very swimmingly under Tocchet's lead. And he does, like I said, have a lot of NHL head coaching experience in multiple different eras, actually. First became an NHL head coach with the Tampa Bay Lightning way back in 2008 to 2010. Then was also the head coach of the Arizona Coyotes from 2017 to 2021. And then, like I just mentioned, spent 2.5 years as the bench boss for Vancouver. He was also a really solid NHL player in his own right. So has a lot of that perspective, as I've talked about, which is always important in the locker room dynamic and something I think the Blackhawks should definitely be paying attention to. Someone that can, be open and honest and have good conversations with his players, but also demands respect and has a good leadership presence about him. I think Rick Tocchet checks off all of those boxes. But he was also a really good NHL player, played over 1,100 games in his career, 5-time NHL All-Star, won the Stanley Cup back in 1992 with the Pittsburgh Penguins, of course, at the demise of our Chicago Blackhawks that year. But not only was he an 1,100-game player, not only was Rick Tocchet been an NHL head coach for 8 seasons, he's also spent a lot of years as an assistant and associate coach as well, around some pretty good guys and pretty good teams. Started with the Detroit Red Wings as an assistant coach back in 2002 to 2005 when they were really absolute juggernaut. He was also an assistant with Arizona from 2005 to 2008, with Tampa before getting the head coaching job and replacing the disastrous Barry Melrose after 16 games. And then he also was an assistant for the Pittsburgh Penguins in 2016 and 2017 when they, of course, like I just talked about a few days ago, won back-to-back Stanley Cups under Mike Sullivan's leadership. And then, like I said, he's just someone who, from all accounts, is a well-respected guy in the locker room. Players really seem to appreciate and enjoy playing for him, and has loads of experience as a coach, as a head coach, as an assistant coach, as a player, as an analyst. He's been around the game for a long time, and even when he wasn't in a position with the league, he was still someone that big-time networks trusted to talk about this game because of all the experience that he has. So there are many reasons for the Blackhawks to be interested in Rick Tocchet. Like I said, I imagine he'll be one of the most sought-after coaches now that he's on the market. But there are also reasons why Rick Tocchet isn't personally in my top 3 candidates, Blackhawks fans. And obviously, I gave out a current top 5 candidates list on the show yesterday. One thing I made sure to mention in there, though, was that this is a fluid situation. There are going to be different names popping up throughout this process until the Blackhawks ultimately make their decision. Now that we know Rick Tocchet is officially on the free agent head coaching market, I would, like I said, I wouldn't mind the Blackhawks being intrigued, and I honestly expect them to. But Tocchet isn't one of my top 3 candidates. I'd probably have him at number 4 or number 5 right here, right now. And the reasoning for that, Blackhawks fans, is looking at his track record. Yes, he does have a lot of experience, and I do think that is worthwhile. But he's also not a coach who has found a lot of success in this league. Out of his 8 years as a head coach, his teams have only finished better than 4th one single time, and that was the Vancouver Canucks 2 years ago when they won the Pacific Division. Also, in 8 years as a head coach, Rick Tocchet has only made the Stanley Cup playoffs twice and has never won a second-round series. He has a little bit of experience with the rebuild back when he was with the Arizona Coyotes, and now listen, there were a lot of problems like in Vancouver. There are a lot of issues with that Arizona Coyotes organization, right? So to put sole blame on Rick Tocchet, I think would be misleading. But at the same point in time, he had 4 years to work with that group, and I don't believe they won 40 games in a single season under his leadership. And then also, just if the Blackhawks want to go with someone with experience, obviously Mike Sullivan is in a different conversation than Rick Tocchet. But personally, Blackhawks fans, I know there hasn't been a lot of buzz around his name, like I mentioned a day ago, but Gerard Gallant, I'd rather be interested in Gerard Gallant than Rick Tocchet because he's at least someone who does have a lot of Stanley Cup playoff experience. And while, yes, the Blackhawks are still going through a couple years of a rebuild before they get to that point, I still think you want a guy commanding this group who has experience in the most meaningful situations in hockey, and that's the Stanley Cup playoffs. And Rick Tocchet just doesn't really have a lot of that. And if they were to bring on someone like Rick Tocchet, I just wonder what's really the upside with him as the NHL head coach, and do they really have long-term plans for a guy like Rick Tocchet once this rebuilding window comes to a close? And that's another question the Blackhawks need to ask themselves here. I'm sure if, they're able to get Mike Sullivan, they'd like him enough to tie him up long-term. But if they don't get Sullivan, they don't get someone like Todd Nelson, who's number 2 in my candidates list right now. They don't get someone like Jay Woodcroft. If they don't get any of those 3 top guys, I do wonder if this becomes a short-term hire process rather than plugging in the long-term guy who's going to be the head man of this group for a long time. I don't necessarily see that being Rick Tocchet, in my opinion. Let me know down below, Blackhawks fans, if you feel the same way about Rick Tocchet that I do, or if you think Rick Tocchet should be one of the top candidates that the Blackhawks are looking for and or interviewing in their process. Give me your full 2 cents on Rick Tocchet in the comment section below. Ultimately, my final thoughts on Tocchet, I would not be surprised to see the Hawks show interest or target Rick Tocchet whatsoever. But if they want an experienced leader, I just don't think he's the number one guy. That's my 2 cents on Rick Tocchet. Let me know if you feel the same way. But that's going to take care of my Rick Tocchet dialogue now that he's officially on the NHL head coaching market. Coming up in just a moment here, Blackhawks fans, stick with me for segment 2 as I'll dive into Teuvo Teravainen's 24-25 season recap. Real quick, though, I got to talk to you all first about Monarch Money. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's real easy to lose track. But that's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and complete control over your finances. And Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center so that you can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place, and that you can stop just managing your money and start building wealth. And what I personally love about Monarch is that instead of juggling multiple financial apps at the same time, you can just use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan your long-term goals. So go and take control of your finances right now with Monarch Money by using our code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps at monarchmoney.com, and you'll get 50% off on your first year. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps at monarchmoney.com for half off on your first year. Segment 2, time for yet another one of my Chicago Blackhawks 24-25 season recaps. Quick reminder first, though, that I've already dished out grades to Connor Bedard, Alex Vlasic, and Ryan Donato. Make sure to go and check out those shows to see what grade I specifically gave to each of them. And also a heads up that everything is always time-coded down in the description on every single episode so that you can easily jump through these shows and get to the point that you want to as fast as possible. Just a quick little heads up if you are someone who's going back and looking at these season recaps. Today, though, for segment 2, I'll be getting into 30-year-old forward. Man, how crazy is it that Teuvo Teravainen is 30 years old? 30-year-old forward Teuvo Teravainen, who, of course, was selected 18th overall by the Blackhawks way back in the 2012 NHL draft after winning a Stanley Cup in his first year in the NHL, wound up getting traded to the Carolina Hurricanes along with Brian Bickle. And then this was his first year back in Chicago after hitting the free agent market and signing a 3-year contract with a $5.4 million AAV. And while when the Blackhawks first signed Teuvo Teravainen, I gave my reasoning as to why it wasn't my favorite signing, and I didn't really love the idea of bringing Teuvo back. He definitely finished the season on a much stronger foot than he started, and some of the reasons, while he did go on to have a really strong season, he was the 3rd leading scorer for the Blackhawks. Some of the reasons why I was concerned about bringing Teuvo back and his fit with the Blackhawks, I do think was evident this year, and I'll go through some of that when diving into his numbers. But for Teuvo, wound up playing in all 82 games for the Blackhawks here this season, which is noteworthy. It's the first time that he's done that in the NHL since 2018-19. Has been a little bit banged up the last few years when he was still with the Canes. And in those 82 games, Teuvo tallied 15 goals, 43 assists for 58 points. Those 15 goals were a little bit down considering he had 25 in 76 games the year prior. The assist numbers, though, were definitely up. It was the most he tallied in a single season since 2019-20. And total in points, it was the most that Teuvo had since the 21-22 season, So a pretty productive year, all things considered. And like I said, definitely finished the season on a much higher note than it started. In the opening 30 games of the season, Teuvo Teravainen had 6 goals and 7 assists for just 13 points. And I believe 4 of those came in a single game against the Edmonton Oilers. However, in his final 53 games of the year, much better consistency out of Teravainen as he tallied 9 goals and 36 assists for 45 points. would have definitely liked, and the Blackhawks definitely would have benefited from Teuvo shooting the puck more and being more of a goal scorer. He actually didn't score a goal in the final 20 games of the season, and for him to only have 9 in the final 52, considering the opportunities that he was getting on a nightly basis, that's a little bit concerning to me, right? And that was kind of some of the issues that I had with bringing Teuvo Teravainen back is he really going to be a difference maker in the middle six? And I don't think we saw that on a consistent basis, especially in the goal scoring department. Next, moving to his minus 23 plus minus rating, right about average for the Blackhawks this year. However, it is the first time that Teuvo has been a minus in a season since 2016-17, a symptom of playing for a really good Carolina Hurricanes bunch for nearly a decade. 12 penalty minutes for Teuvo in 82 games. An undersized forward who really isn't all that physical along the boards and in the dirty areas. Not all that surprising, but I do at least appreciate that he's not taking stupid penalties out there at all. And then breaking down his even strength to power play distribution in terms of productivity this year. And this was really my gripe with Teuvo Teravainen coming into the season. And this is why I still have some concerns about him being a part of the roster and probably playing a semi-meaningful role for the next 2 seasons. In 82 games this year, Teuvo Teravainen scored 8 even strength goals. 8. And he was getting opportunities with the better skill players that the Blackhawks had, averaging 17 minutes and 4 seconds of time on ice. It's only the second time he's played 17 minutes per game in the last 5 years. For him to only have 8 even strength goals in 82 games is definitely alarming. And listen to this, Blackhawks fans. This was something that I outlined in the offseason prior to going into free agency, and I mentioned this when the Blackhawks signed Teravainen. A reason why I was a little bit worried about him coming to Chicago is that 2 years ago, he only had 5 even strength goals in 68 games, and that's playing for a really good puck possession squad in the Carolina Hurricanes. So now in 2 years, I believe he only played 68 games that year in which he scored 5 even strength goals, but still in like 145 game sample size or whatever it may be from those 2 seasons alone, Teuvo Teravainen only has 13 even strength goals. He's really not someone who can create his own scoring opportunities on his own. However, he is someone who does benefit from getting opportunities on the power play, and that's really where he's made his presence felt these last 2 years. 8 even strength goals for Teravainen this year. He had 7 power play goals and has 16 combined in the last 2 years. So is someone who can still make the most of his chances on the man advantage, but also 17 of his 43 assists on the year also came on the power play. So out of his 58 points on the season, what's that? 25 of them came on the man advantage. Nearly half of his productivity was on the power play. That's a little bit alarming, and I don't even know, based on what the Blackhawks do this offseason, Teuvo Teravainen is going to be getting those same opportunities on the top power play unit again next year. And then another concerning stat for me with Teuvo Teravainen in terms of odds he has a season like this and why I'm concerned about maybe another dip coming is he shot 13.5% this year. He's a career 10.9% shooter, so he shot above his career average this season. However, he had a career low 111 shots on goal. It's actually second lowest of his NHL career, but his lowest is when he was a rookie and only played in 34 games with the Blackhawks. So it's the lowest amount of shots on goal that Teravainen has had in an 82-game season. Not a lot of opportunities. Finding the back of the net on a clip that's much higher than his career high. Not a lot of goals at even strength. These are all things why I was concerned about bringing Teuvo Teravainen back. And then also, I don't really blame him for this stat. He had a career high 76 giveaways this season, but really can't blame him considering he was getting a little bit larger of an opportunity than he's used to the last half decade. And also considering the Blackhawks didn't have a lot of speed or skill, he was probably having to lug the mail up the ice more than he usually has the last few seasons. Last but certainly not least, getting into Teuvo's analytics. The analytics were still all right for him. 47.1 Corsi for percentage is actually some of the best, almost the best of any Blackhawks forward. He's actually never been below 50 at even strength in his entire career. So someone who's responsible defensively, does a good job on that side of the ice, but also usually makes himself worth it, or at least closer to that, offensively carrying his own weight. Was on the ice for 47 goals for to 67 goals against this year. Kind of right on par. Maybe I'd like him to be on the ice for some more goals for at even strength, and his own productivity at 5-on-5, I'm sure, plays a part into that. 86.3 on ice save percentage. I think there's a lot that goes into that stat, though, because I know Teuvo is one of the more reliable defensive forwards on the Blackhawks. But as far as his strengths and weaknesses, what do we know about Teuvo Teravainen after rejoining the Blackhawks for 1 year, and that he has, and the fact that he has 2 years left on his current contract? His strengths, I would say his biggest strength is that he's a very diverse player who can give you a little bit of everything out there, right? Like, he can be productive on the power play. He can play on the penalty kill, middle six role out there on the wing. He can be smart defensively. He has good offensive instincts for the most part. He's definitely more of a puck mover than a goal scorer, and playmaking is 1,000% his best asset. He's got some good hockey IQ, and he thinks the game really well. It's clear that he's been playing it at a high level since he was a young man, coming into this league at 18, 19 years old. And then, like I said as well, he goes about his business the right way. He really doesn't take plays off. He gives you good effort and is responsible, usually in the right spots on the defensive side of things, and can be a willing shot blocker and has an active stick while perusing the top circles on the penalty kill as well. The weaknesses, or I guess maybe some of the problems with Teuvo Teravainen's game, first and foremost, is that he's undersized and doesn't have blazing speed, which is a little tough combination for a guy who really doesn't like to mix it up and get into those dirty areas. He can just kind of get bodied off the puck a little bit easily, and he's just not able to outwheel guys out there enough to give himself enough of an opportunity, particularly to score goals. Also, not an elite goal scorer whatsoever. He's a very streaky goal scorer. When he's seeing the puck go in, he can score them in bunches, but when he's cold, he goes ice cold. And sometimes I think he lets that affect his mindset, and when he should be shooting the puck, sometimes he tries to make the extra pass. I get he's a pass first guy and not a goal scorer, but the Blackhawks need him to trust himself and call his own number a little bit more frequently. And then also, he's not a physical player. That's just not an aspect of his game that's ever really been apparent. He's just never been a guy who's sought contact, gone out of his way to find those dirty spots in the zone. So as far as what Teuvo Teravainen is, he's just a middle six player who I believe he can help make a good team great, but he's just not he's not a needle mover himself. And I don't think, this was another one of my gripes, I don't think he's built for finding success at the highest level against the best teams in this league, right? Because he's an undersized forward who doesn't have a ton of speed. He can get bumped off the puck easily. That doesn't scream success come Stanley Cup playoff time. And while he only has 2 more years left on his current contract, odds of him playing Stanley Cup playoff hockey here in Chicago are a little bit slim. But I just don't think a player like that was really a need for the Chicago Blackhawks when they already had some undersized guys in their top 6. They need guys who are blistering fast or have some size to go along with it, and preferably a combination of both. And Teuvo Teravainen, while he still finds ways to be an effective player, has good hockey IQ, is a good playmaker out there, he just isn't that. So I just question the fit with him in the Blackhawks for 3 years. Ultimately, though, regardless of the fit, that doesn't go into the grade that I'm giving Teuvo for his performance this season. Third leading scorer for the Blackhawks, did a lot of good things in those final 53 games, 45 points, good stuff. The Blackhawks definitely needed that. But at the same point in time, the areas where they really needed Teuvo Teravainen, aka 5-on-5 productivity and goal scoring, he really let them down this year. And 8 even strength goals in 82 games is pretty gosh darn putrid for a guy who's making $5.5 million per year. So because of that, I'm going to give Teuvo Teravainen a B- for his performance this season. I do still think nearly having a 60-point plateau, I can't critique him too much. But again, I just kind of question the fit from general manager Kyle Davidson and giving him a 3-year deal to bring him back to Chicago. But let me know in the comment section below what grade you give Blackhawks forward Teuvo Teravainen for his performance this season. And make sure to let me know which Blackhawks player you want to see me cover next on my 24-25 season recaps. But that's going to take care of Teuvo Teravainen's 24-25 season recap. Coming up in just a moment, Blackhawks fans, I still got to talk about the World Championships and all you need to know as a Blackhawks fan before the tournament begins. Real quick, though, I do got to talk to you all first about Amazon Fire TV. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? You can now turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. And you can dive into hundreds of premium titles such as EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. And with 4K streaming, you can also watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. So head on over to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started today. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Just wanted to say thank you to everyone for making Locked On Blackhawks your very first listen, here to start off your day. For your second listen, make sure to go and check out the new Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night, up until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned, you can get local analysis on a national scale. And you can now find Locked On NHL Game Night on YouTube or wherever you may be listening to your podcasts. Segment 3, before I wrap up today's show, do want to get into some quick updates on the 2025 IIHF World Championships, which is set to begin in just over a week in Stockholm, Sweden at Avicii Arena, and Herning, Denmark as well, as the tournament will be held from May 9th through May 25th in the two countries of Sweden and Denmark. And when your teams aren't making deep runs in the Stanley Cup playoffs, this is the final opportunity you get to watch a couple of players in action before training camp gets underway in the fall. And it looks like we'll have at least a couple Blackhawks taking part in this tournament. Final rosters are obviously going to be announced in the couple days prior to the tournament beginning. And with the Stanley Cup playoffs, obviously we're not sure who's going to move into the second round at this point in time. Whenever teams get eliminated from the Stanley Cup playoffs, we frequently see a couple of those guys go and play in the World Championship as well. So these rosters, they're going to be a fluid situation as well over the next week and a half up until this tournament begins. But like I said, a couple of Blackhawks that look like they're taking part. Before I get into that, though, a little bit of a breakdown on this tournament for those who aren't too familiar, although considering how often the Blackhawks have not been playing in the Stanley Cup playoffs, I think us Hawks fans are pretty familiar with the World Championships at this point in time, but it's not, the highest international level of hockey, considering most of the big name players are still taking part in the Stanley Cup playoffs. But I do think with all the international best on best that's going to be happening in professional hockey the next handful of years, I think these tournaments are going to start seeing better and better rosters year after year. And we've already kind of seen that the last few years. But for this season, we're going to see, for this year's World Championship, we're going to see 16 countries taking part, split into two groups of 8 based on seeding from last year's tournament. Group A this year will be Canada, Finland, Sweden, one of the two host countries, Slovakia, Latvia, Austria, France, and Slovenia. For Group B, defending tournament champion, Czechia will be in Group A, along with Switzerland, who finished runner-up last year. The United States are in Group B as well, along with Germany, the second host country, Denmark, Norway, Kazakhstan, shout out to Borat, and Hungary to round things out. Preliminary rounds, again, begin on May 9th. They'll run for 10 days all the way up to May 19th. Then everybody will get a couple of days rest before the playoff rounds begin on May 22nd. Quick rundown of the champions the last 4 years since COVID canceled the tournament in 2020. Last year, I just mentioned Czechia took down Switzerland 2-0 in the gold medal game. Czechia was also serving as the host country last year. Kevin Fiala, despite Switzerland coming up short for the gold, was named tournament MVP. Then in 2023, Canada defeated Germany 5-2. Neither team, though, in the gold medal game had a player named MVP of the tournament. That actually went to Archer Shilovs. Probably the first time a lot of people had heard of Shilovs, as he won MVP for Latvia as they made it all the way to the bronze medal game and ended up taking home the bronze, which is super cool. Then in 2022, Finland won as the host country. So 2 of the last 3 gold medal winners have been from the host country. Definitely something to keep in mind for Sweden, and maybe if you think Denmark can absolutely shock the world. But Finland defeated Canada 4-3 in overtime in 2022, and then Canada actually beat Finland for gold in overtime the year prior, 3-2. As far as the Blackhawks players, though, that we know that are going to take part in the tournament as of now, maybe we'll see if a couple more trickle themselves onto rosters. But 2 of the 3 are going to be playing for the United States. One, Alex Vlasic, who's back for his 2nd World Championship appearance. The other is my boy, Frank the Tank Nazar, baby. His first World Championship experience. And honestly, I'm just happy the kid is going to take this time to play more hockey, get himself on Team USA's radar. Who knows how things go for Frank Nazar this upcoming season? Maybe he finds himself pushing for a roster spot on Team USA one of these next couple of years. Good opportunity for him to strut his stuff for Team USA here in the World Championships. We have seen Nazar represent the United States plenty of times in his young career, most recently winning gold at the 2024 World Juniors, also played for the United States Development Program for a couple of years before joining Michigan. And then Alex Vlasic, I mentioned this will be his 2nd consecutive World Championship appearance for Team USA. Last year, he tallied 2 assists in 8 games. Also played for the USA at the U18 World Junior Championship, winning a bronze medal, and like Frank Nazar, spent a couple of years developing for the USNTDP. The 3rd member of the Blackhawks that we know right now is taking part in this tournament is goaltender Arvid Soderblom, who's going to be playing for Sweden. It'll be his first time representing Sweden at the World Championships, and looking at his elite prospects, he really doesn't have a ton of international experience for his home country. So excited to see what Soderblom has in store. Could be noteworthy considering he's a restricted free agent here this summer. Just looking at Sweden's preliminary roster right now, they look like they could be pretty fun as the host country. On the blue line, they got Simone Edvinsson and Rasmus Andersson leading the way. And then up front, they're going to have Mika Zibanejad, Leo Carlsson, William Eklund, and Alex Wenberg. So definitely got to keep our eyes on the host country, Sweden. I'll make sure to give you all more updates on the World Championship and the final rosters once the tournament gets a little bit closer. But there are the 3 Blackhawks that we know are going to be taking part in this year's World Championship. That's going to take care of today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks, everyone. As always, thank you all again for joining me on the show. Be sure to subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube and to follow Locked On Blackhawks for free wherever you may be listening to your podcasts. Until the next episode, everyone, enjoy the rest of your Wednesdays. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.